Restoring old aircraft is a passion for the many volunteers at the New England Air Museum in Windsor Locks, Connecticut. What the public sees on the display floor is often the result of years of restoration work done by some talented individuals, many of whom once worked in the aircraft industry. Producer Dave Fraser was invited to go behind the curtain and look inside the 11,000 square foot restoration hangar to see how these skilled volunteers are helping to bring the past back to the present.
On Tuesdays and Thursdays, the restoration hangar at the New England Air Museum in Windsor Locks is a buzz of activity. Former engineers, mechanics, and builders of aircraft who had fulfilling careers now volunteer their time and expertise, bringing the past back to the present.
A lot of them come from the aircraft industry, whether it be Pratt & Whitney, Sikorsky, Command, which are just down the road, Hamilton Standard, which is right across the field, now goes by Collins Aerospace. So we have that quality of people.
Since I worked for Hamilton Standard for 35 years, I have an interest in aviation, and I needed an outlet for Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's very rewarding because you spend hours and hours and hours of doing it, and you can see your end product. It's also going to provide people who are familiar with the aircraft the opportunity to be up front and close to the aircraft.
Harry Newman retired from IBM as an executive in the Human Resources Department. He began volunteering at the Air Museum as a way to give back and to satisfy his interest in aviation.
My dad took me to an air show when I was about 9 years old, and I got the bug. And grew up in a generation where aircraft were advancing rapidly, new jets were coming along, very exciting field. So I thought when I retired, it would be nice to work at an air museum. And this was the air museum closest to me, so this is where I ended up.
Currently, Newman is the crew chief for the restoration of the Brunelli CBY-3 Loadmaster that came to the museum in 1972 after sitting abandoned for several years. It is the only one of its kind left in the world.
We've been working on it for 6.5 years, and it was in pretty bad shape. There was a lot of corrosion, there had been some damage, and so we rebuilt all of that. It's not going to fly again. So we're rebuilding it to what we call a static display. And the real emphasis is showing off that this was a stepping stone towards modern aircraft, because you see a lot of blended wing type, blended fuselage, lifting body type of aircraft today. Well, this was one of the earlier prototypes of that evolution.
One of Newman's first restoration projects was this Lockheed F-104 Starfighter that was damaged during the tornado that hit Windsor Locks in 1979.
It was parked out in the back lot here at the museum in cold storage for about 30 years. On the 30th anniversary of the tornado, we brought it up and started to do the restoration, put it back together again.
Today, the F-104 is on public display along with over 55 other aircraft in 3 large exhibit hangars. Connecting each plane to its past is a process. They all have a unique serial number and in some cases logbooks that show where the planes were stationed. But when it comes to finding parts, that can be a real challenge.
There's almost like a parts mafia out there that deal with some of the old parts. You got to know who to talk to, where to go, and pick up some of these. But we can't always do that. We have a machine shop that some of the machinery is as old as the aircraft are, and some machinists that'll take some of the parts and they will build them from scratch or drawings. But our guys have to know everything, turning a screw to riveting sheet metal to doing work with fabrics that probably haven't been on aircraft for years.
Rick Santori was assigned to lead the restoration volunteer team that is bringing the Command HOK-1 helicopter back to life. Santori worked on aircraft like this when he was in the Marine Corps in 1965.
We had 6 of them. We only had them for a month and a half, and after which we converted all over to the Bell Huey, and we went to Vietnam with those. The second connection is that in the 1950s, when this was at Command Aircraft as a test flight aircraft, my father was a test flight inspector, so he worked on this. So I have a real affinity for this aircraft.
Cesar Luacius was a flight engineer on the CH-54 Sky Crane when he served in the Army National Guard. So when one showed up at the museum in need of restoration, he jumped at the opportunity to help.
Been restoring this, we cleaned it up, brought it in, and I enjoy talking about it because it's really one of my passions. We've shown it all over the place, and all the pilots and everyone else that were together, we really talk about this all the time. And this aircraft was really part of our family.
Back in the restoration hangar, Pete Mcconnell is fabricating some passenger seats for a Douglas DC-3 that is currently on display. Mitchell first spent the better part of a year repainting the outside of the aircraft before setting his sights on the interior.
This plane was born in 1943, and it was scheduled to be delivered to Eastern Airlines. The military decided they needed the plane for the war effort. They came in, confiscated it, and although it never was used in military service, for several years it was a military aircraft, a troop transport aircraft, and was stationed in the United States.
Through research and tireless time scavenging for old parts, plus some good old Yankee ingenuity, these aircraft are receiving a second life. And although the process takes years to complete, the volunteers doing the work are loving every minute of it.
It's a lot of fun, and it keeps me busy, it gets me out of the house. And also, this is a great bunch of people to work with. It's a great museum to work with. We're dealing with people here who have been in the aviation field as engineers and pilots and designers and so on for their whole careers. And it's just a great social environment also to sit down, trade war stories, talk about how we do things.
Everyone loves to be here. I love history. It's great to see this stuff and then to present it to the public.